I promise you, everyone eventually will need this type of wisdom like they need air for their own evolution.
Mm.
Whether it's my work or someone else's,
Mm.
they will need, this is the way. Metaphysics, the higher mind is we are not our lower mind. That's a product of the incarnation. We are our higher self. We are our higher mind. And if we want to ascend and evolve our consciousness with the greatest efficacy, metaphysics, magic is the way.
There goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution. And it is an absolute treat to be here today. We have with us RJ Spina. RJ, how are we, brother?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for being here. For those tuning in, we have with us, I want to say, a metaphysical expert, but fundamentally, let's bring it back to humble origins. RJ basically shares his unique 7-step healing system that he used to overcome chest down paralysis and a whole myriad of chronic illnesses. And I know in the bio, I could go through and sort of list all the things that were going on for you, but I think that will do some disservice to actually, and I'd love to just tune in with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life? Like you were not able to move from chest down, plagued with a whole bunch of illnesses. Can you describe that state to us a little bit and what was going on for you? Because I think it'd be much more apt to hear it from you.
Sure. Yeah. There was a myriad of things going on. And by the way, the best way I can describe chest down paralysis is like being stuck in quicksand and you can't move. By the way, that's kind of what it feels like, or at least that's what it felt for me. So permanent chest down paralysis, which was a result of sepsis. So I had gotten an infection, gotten into my blood, and actually it had gotten into my spine, specifically T7 and T8, crushed my spine. There's an MRI right on my website. I did a whole video. You can actually see me unparalyzing myself. But there was I know it sounds funny, unparalyzing myself.
It's crazy.
But that's what happened. So the permanent, air quotes, chest down paralysis, I was diagnosed with pancreatitis, thyroiditis, type 1 diabetes, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, which is really hypothyroidism, by the way. And then something really interesting, which is called autonomic dysreflexia. Autonomic dysreflexia, anyone who knows a paraplegic or a quadriplegic or is experiencing those states will be familiar with it. So your autonomic system is what runs automatically, like your pulse, heart rate, body temperature. So when you have an injury in your spine, anything above T6, and the focus of mine was 7 and 8. So my blood pressure would just drop, my pulse would just drop, my body temperature would greatly decrease or skyrocket. You stop breathing. You literally stop breathing. And so what happens is people that have those injuries, quadriplegics or paraplegics, they often die of complications from autonomic dysreflexia. You can have an aneurysm, a stroke.
It sounds like your body just cannot regulate itself, man. Like that is insane.
You got literally like everything just shuts off. Hence automatic, what normally runs automatically. Literally, there's no communication because of the electricity that goes through the spine. That's the main conduit. So when there's enough damage, that electricity just stops. So there's no signal to breathe. Your body temperature will just drop, and it would happen. I mean, literally just out of the blue, you would just be sitting there and all of a sudden there's no breath going on. Your body temperature would drop like 5 degrees in like 2 minutes. So I had to learn on the spot. It's very much like an ancient yogic practice to literally regain your breathing, your body temperature, your pulse, those deep rooted systems within that we normally, our conscious mind doesn't really have access to.
Yeah.
So I had to learn or remember on the fly because that was pretty challenging. So all that stuff was going on in addition to, air quote, permanent chest down paralysis.
Because this is the bizarro thing. Like, so I'm listening to your story and I'm hearing it, and I'm watching you. You're like me. You talk with your hands a lot, so your hands are moving while you're explaining all of this. So you've obviously more than overcome this, and now you're actually sharing this with the world. So you mentioned an interesting piece there about remembering, and I know, having read your book, that there's a piece around there. But how do I even begin the questioning of like what inspired you to transform? I imagine that was already in there. There was like a deep-seated will. What do you associate the core impulse that didn't leave you resigned to your state?
Boy, that's a great question. Okay, that's a great question. I have to give some context.
Please.
As a little kid, I would leave my body, what we call astral projection, consciousness exploration. So, and this was obviously, I was literally a little kid. No one was teaching me this, or there was no training. So it was just natural. I would literally just sit down and relax, and my consciousness would be standing next to my body or above my body. So this was totally normal. Totally normal for me. And so was exploring what later turns out to be frequencies, different dimensions, different realities. As a kid, it was just playtime. But this is what I would do naturally. So I always knew what I really was: consciousness, sentience, spirit, whatever word you want to use.
Sorry to interject there just for a sec. Yeah. I've also heard you say that this physical component of us is just 2.5% of what we really are.
Yes. Yeah. As weird, right, as bizarre as this sounds. So here's my first silly visual. Okay. So I know this is my fist, but pretend this is not
silly, by the way. Go on.
Yes. Me too. Okay. So this is an octopus. Okay. And this is a tentacle. Okay. Yeah. Now the octopus is our higher self. And a lot of people have heard that term: higher self, oversoul, Godhead. I call it our totality because it's everything we've been, are, and will be. Okay. So the octopus is the higher self. And it's just like the octopus just kind of dropping down a tentacle just to kind of see what the water is like down here. Now, you and me and everyone here, we're the tentacle. We are almost like a drone. We are a piece, 2.5%. We are our higher self, just far less in volume.
Right.
Okay. So, and by the way, enlightenment, from my perspective, actual enlightenment or self-realization is full communion with the higher self, full communion with the octopus.
With the rest of 97.5% of it.
Yeah. So truly enlightened beings have access to wisdom and knowledge and information that people that are not enlightened just simply don't have, because it's so far beyond the five senses, and it's so far beyond the human intellect, which is bound by logic and linearity. And once
it can be overwhelming, even just in the 2.5% to navigate this reality. Yeah.
So this was normal for me, as you know, as weird as it is. It wasn't for me. So I was doing these kind of things. Like, you could say I came into this world this way. And I also used to say, if I ever get sick, I'll just heal myself, which is, you know, just as bizarre as the other stuff I was talking about. But that is what I used to say. And I even told my mom one time, and I think they made me take this out of the book, by the way. I remember a conversation with my mother when I was very young, and I literally said, I know exactly what I'm going to do in this life. I remember everything. And she's like, what? What do you mean you remember everything? I said, no, I planned everything. I'm remembering what's going to happen. So I remember saying, and I was quite specific about certain events in my life, which wound up, you know, coming to fruition. And my last name is Spina, which means spine. So when I say that,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Like
no,
that.
No, I mean, it's so, you know, as we look at it from a more holistic and higher consciousness perspective, it becomes rather obvious, and everything is laid out. I just simply remember and am accessing these things. We all do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just RJ. I just happened to, through a traumatic experience, forced my own cosmic consciousness, if you will. I had no choice but to awaken to my higher mind fully in order to be able to put my body back together. But this is the exact same thing that we all do. We all do this before we get here. We map it all out, we plan it all out. It's called a life plan. And then when we get here, we literally agree to forget the whole thing. Because, by the way, if we remembered everything, what would be the point of coming here?
Yeah, the one of my favorite philosophers is Alan Watts, and he talks about the novelty of going on a journey of taking a dream. And it's like the first time you dream, and it's like, okay, I know I'm going to sleep. I'm just going to dream. But you know you're dreaming, so you fly, you jump, you run, you swim, but you know you're human, but you're dreaming. And then next time you dream, you get a little bit more courageous, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to dream that I'm dreaming within a dream, and you start dreaming with that. And then eventually you hit the point, having worked up the courage, and we talked about courage even a little bit before the episode today, that actually I would love to go on a dream where I wouldn't even be feeling like I'm dreaming. Like, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Let's forget that I'm dreaming and let's dream. And then you go, please continue.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. I love that. So I call this, everything that I've written and teach and et cetera, it's a remembering. And I really mean that. And in fact, all the stuff that I say when I work with someone and et cetera, I'll say these higher consciousness, metaphysics, et cetera. And you're familiar, you read the book. And when I'm speaking with someone, it's literally, it's not the first time they're hearing it. It might be the first time they're hearing it in this incarnation. It might be the first time they're hearing it in the way that I'm saying it as RJ in this incarnation. There's this instant recognition of truth. Everyone already knows all the stuff I talk about. We've just forgotten. We've just forgotten. And I happened to give myself a big enough challenge that forced me to remember. And as a little kid, I used to say, if I ever get sick, I'll just heal myself. I'm remembering everything that I've already planned for myself that's going to happen. So the veil had been somewhat, wasn't as thick, I guess we could say. And then upon, permanent paralysis and waking up from emergency life-saving surgery, the best way I can say it, it's not entirely true, but the best way I can say it, I had fully awakened into cosmic consciousness, which is actually, believe it or not, past enlightenment. So it's actually past enlightenment. It's a knowingness, an aspect of actual self-mastery to be able to put your body back together and explain the metaphysics behind it. So all of us know how to do this. All of us have done this. Okay. I'm just here to make sure I remember, and that way everyone else can remember.
Wow. So I do want to get exactly into the 7 steps on how to get there, right? So but bear with me just a sec, because there are a couple of points you mentioned in there, and promise audience, we will get into it. But you mentioned that this piece around remembrance was requested to be taken out of the book. Why?
My take on it is that they want the information to be as palatable and digestible to the widest audience as possible. And I totally get it. It's a business. It's the book business. They want to sell as many. I totally understand. And I'm not, there's no antagonistic sort of thing. No. Yeah. But there were certain things that were in there that they're like, RJ, that's amazing and that's great, but you got to take that out.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right.
And then the second other last little piece before we dive into it, which may not be a little piece, is if I ever got sick, I'll just heal myself. Walking around with that phrase, man, I just want to tune in with you. Like, how much of it was pre-awareness that this was going to happen versus just some part of your question that you called this in? Like, or is it like other two? Even talking to you now, I'm sort of wondering if those two are any different. I don't know. Like, can you can you unpack that? Like, yeah.
The only way I can really say it is that I didn't know when I used to say it, if my mom or my dad would have asked me, okay, how would you actually do that? I would have literally said, well, I don't know, but I know that I know. I know that I know. And the only thing I can give that's sort of tangible to this, it's almost like a muscle memory. It's like I knew it was in me because I used to say it repetitively, by the way. I used to say it, but if it wasn't in my conscious mind yet, and it wasn't in my conscious mind yet because it wasn't time yet. But the moment that I woke up from emergency surgery and, you know, we had that laundry list of things going on, it's literally like, oh yeah, I remember. I literally started saying it to the ICU nurse. I said, I'm going to put myself back together. I'm talking about as soon as I woke up from the anesthesia. I started explaining higher consciousness metaphysics. She probably thought I was absolutely crazy.
But as I hysteria, probably.
But what's interesting, and this is something else that they took out of the book. So I actually started explaining this to her, and she's looking at me, you know, kind of like I got three heads, right? Right, but
little did you know you've got four.
Oh, right. But
sorry,
what started
from the book? Go on.
Yes, no. What started to happen though, what was really interesting, is that the more I talked, because it was so specific, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just going to be so happy that I'll hit. It was ultra specific about energetic templates, higher frequencies. She's looking at me. She's like, how do you know this? Because it was too specific. It wasn't just like some general ramble. She's like, how do you know this? And I said, I remember. And I told everyone that I would heal myself. I told the doctor, the neurosurgeon, everybody. I mean, they're like, okay, that's great, Mr. Spina. Just make sure you get your home retrofitted, because, you know, I'm glad you're going to heal yourself, but just make sure you get your home retrofitted, and, you know, make sure you do the physical therapy and all this kind of stuff. But before I got out of there, the hospital rehab, I was there for 9 weeks or 8, give or take. I was in the hospital for 10 days. They transferred me to the rehab for another 2 months. But before I got out of there, I mean, I was moving. I wasn't walking yet, but I was moving around. I was kicking my legs. I was doing a whole bunch of stuff. They got on board pretty quick. In the beginning, it's like, oh, this RJ guy's a little. I was known as the meditation guy, by the way. They're like, the meditation guy is crazy. But once I started kicking my legs and doing a whole bunch of other stuff, they got on board too. So, you know, in the beginning, they weren't on board. Once they saw legs doing this, yeah, then they're like, you know what? This guy's going to do it. You're right. You are going to do it.
Yeah.
We can all do it.
Tell us how. Run us through the 7 steps, man, please.
Yeah, you got, okay. So the first thing that I talk about, which I actually, believe it or not, I actually feel is the most important thing. It's the foundation of the ascended frequency healing technique. And there's a reason why I put it first. And there's a reason why I ramble on and on about it in the book. And anyone who works with me knows I ramble on and on about this specific topic a lot, because it's the whole thing. It's the ego, mind, identity.
EMI.
Yeah, the EMI. Okay. So I say, as you know, the EMI, the ego mind identity, is a limitation program that runs by thinking. Okay. So it is the story that we tell ourselves that we then create a human character. Okay. That human character is not what we really are. Now, that human character completely disempowers us from what we really are, an eternal, immortal creator being.
But then why do we have it?
It happens through incarnation. So as we come, it's not up or down, but as we come down, so to speak, dimensionally and frequentially, you can kind of think of it as losing consciousness.
Right.
Okay. We're no longer in that holistic environment. The oneness, the tangible oneness is gone. Right.
Okay.
So by coming all the way down here, and remember, we're now reduced to 2.5% of what we really are. Okay. So the low frequencies, because we're so cut off from the knowing of who we are and where we come from, we create a character, a human character. All the world's a stage. We create a character. That is the ego mind identity. We're not this thing. This is a suit. We're not from here. No one is. No one's going to stay here. You slide into this body, you're going to slide out. Okay. So the key is to tangibly know this. And then when you start to work with your higher mind, the metaphysics of the higher mind, the logic and linearity limitations that we have with our ego mind identity are gone. So now it's no longer, well, you can't do this, RJ, or it doesn't work that way. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because for most people, overcoming ego is like a whole lifelong journey. And I'll be one of the first people to put my hand up in that space. But as you start to read the book, you're like, you call out even just that. It's like, even just that difficulty is part of your story, mate. Like, I don't want to say fuck off, but that's what I literally felt like you were saying to me. It's like, just wait, that's average ego, fuck off. That actually, yeah, like it doesn't have to be a struggle to overcome the ego.
The struggle is the ego.
Mm.
Okay, well, let's just use analogies, and I like silly analogies because I like to joke around anyway. Okay, I like to say that a dog doesn't have to try to be a dog; it's a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all of us, we actually don't have to try to be ourself, our true self. We are our true self.
Mm.
All our effort and stress is in trying to be something that we're not.
Mm.
That is what the ego mind identity is. When we are in a higher state of consciousness, okay, it is tangible that there's no resistance to anything. It's one thing, literally, not some spiritual mumbo jumbo. It's one thing. There's no resistance.
Mm.
There's no block to anything.
Mm.
So when I say that we can literally do anything, I'm not joking. We can, when we work with our higher mind, it's the imagination of God. There's no limitations. Now, once we create a character, we have separated ourselves from the oneness. Mm-hmm. And that character, the ego mind identity, is based upon whatever is floating around down here in the low frequencies. This belief, this concept, that concept, this so-called knowledge, which is simply justified beliefs. The only real knowledge is knowledge of self, or gnosis. Okay. And beliefs are just a string of thoughts. That's all they are. Okay. So when we start to get all this distance from this detachment, when we start to get distance from the body, from the mind, we realize that all those things are nothing. They're energy. There's no block. There's no resistance. Just like when in our natural state, everything is connected. Everything is one. We have access to everything. And it works holographically. Everything is contained. It's all there. Everybody has what they need. If you don't have it, then you don't need it. We are everything. We're like an atom of God. And the higher self is like a cell of God. We have it all, just less volume, but we have it all. So when we let go of the ego mind, which is just your accumulation of identifications, I'm a this, I'm a that, this experience, this thought, this feeling, this bodily sensation. You put them all together, that's your false character. Okay? It's just various little fish bowls that we put ourselves in. Meditation, especially the meditation that I teach and write about, annihilates the idea that you're merely human. You go so far past the thinking mind. And you're now in a completely different state of consciousness. You're in your normal state, which is your own higher mind. You are your higher mind. You are your higher self. So when we work this way, I don't care what's wrong with the body. What difference does it make? The body is energy. The body is energy. And when you work in the way that the book lays out, when you go to these higher states of consciousness, you're going to the levels, if you will, of where form and function are created. Right? Don't work with the body. The energy is too slow and dense. Work with what informs the body, the higher mind, the higher frequencies. What you do up there completely dictates what happens with the body. Think about everything that you think about and believe in is what you end up taking action on. The same thing. It's the exact same thing. We've just been brainwashed, literally. We've just been brainwashed that you can't heal. You need a pill. You need an antibiotic. You need a tincture. Nonsense. Every time we take something, a pill, a tincture, I don't care what it is, every time you are agreeing that matter has dominion over spirit. It does not. Matter comes from spirit. And so there's this subliminal brainwashing that goes on every time you take something. You then think that matter has dominion over spirit, and then you think you have to go that route. That's the medicalization of health. Okay. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Everything comes from spirit. Everything is energy. And when you command it properly, you can put yourself back together, even including paralysis.
Command is one of the steps that I find really intriguing, but just to, I think hearing you share what you shared, the whole piece of getting out of your own way all of a sudden starts to make a little bit more sense, because I've heard that phrase a lot. Get out of your own way, mate. Get out of your own way. You know, and it's like, yeah, but what does that practically actually mean? And you can, that character that you assume in the 2.5% sort of, and the limitations that it presents towards the rest of you, that energetic version of you from showing up, allowing that to get out of its own way. Before we tumble down the rabbit hole even further, meditation. For some people, meditation is really hard, but you've got magic tricks, literally, when it comes to meditation, bro. Can you run us through a trick?
I'd love to. Okay. So I love magic. Okay. And I make no bones about it. Okay. I do magic. Now, when I say magic, I don't mean magic with a C, like pick a card, any card. I'm not talking about that kind of magic. Okay. I'm talking about magic with a CK. Now, magic with a CK, from my direct experience, is the accessing and utilization of energies that exist outside of physical sensory perception. Okay. That's my definition of magic. Okay. Very simple. Now, magic with a CK is metaphysics. They're the same thing. Okay. People get weirded out when you say magic. No, it's metaphysics. That's what it is. Okay. Now, as I said, I make no bones about it. I do magic, and I mean it. It's metaphysics. I understand metaphysics at a certain level, and metaphysics is magic, and magic is metaphysics. Okay. So with my little preamble there, the context, I agree with you. Many of us struggle with meditation, and I get it. We're in a foreign environment. We're inside a suit. None of us are from here. We're bombarded with constant stimulus. We're in survival mode. Of course, meditation is difficult. Of course it is. Absolutely. And I totally understand why. I mean, I'm here as well. I get it. Okay. But I like to say that what you really are, the self, is meditation, because what you are exists prior to thought. You exist whether you're thinking or not. You existed before there was a thought. You exist before you have an emotion. You exist before you even slid into this body. Therefore, you exist before there was even any bodily experiences or sensations. So the self is meditation. So it's easy. And I'm going to prove it. Okay. Anybody can now meditate in 1 second. In 1 second. Okay. This is the beauty of magic.
This episode is going to be fire. Go on.
That's right. Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's, and we can even do more than one, but let's do one right now.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And I teach this literally to little kids, and I teach this literally to people in their 80s and 90s. You know, so it makes no difference. Okay, because all of us, the self is meditation. It's universal. Okay, this is all you have to do. These two eyes, your two eyes, pretend they're not connected to your brain. You can't think. There it is.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about this paradigm shift for a second. Okay. First off, magic is a lot of fun. And I mean it. Healing, by the way, the ticket, it's magic. It's metaphysics, but it's magic, right? So, okay. The paradigm shift has been, I can't meditate. I've tried. And people really do. I mean, they really do. They get their incense, they get their crystals, they get their headphones, and, you know, right. Okay. And I understand why it's so difficult. Yeah. But now you can meditate in 1 second without trying.
Incredible.
So we went from RJ, I've tried for 10 years, 20 years, you know, whatever, to
your eyes are just not connected to your brain, and just
right. So
wow, man, wow.
That's magic. That, my friend, is magic. Okay. And let's just do one more, because anyone can just pretend their two eyes are not connected to the brain. And in 1 second, you're in instant meditation. And by the way, the other thing, just to add before we get to another magic trick, is that when you do that, your two eyes not connected to your brain, meditation, Stay that way.
Hmm.
You don't have to do anything. Just stay that way. And just continue. Just stay that way. And do you, whatever it is that you do, whatever it is, just do it like that. Now you're in the flow state. There you go. Right?
More energy than matter.
Right? Exactly. So this is why I get so jazzed about magic. I mean, it's literally part of me.
Intriguing.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do one more, another magic trick. Just because one's not enough. All right. So let's do this. Pretend that you just arrived here. No past, no future. You can't think again. You can't think again. Now, and let me explain why. Okay.
Yeah.
Thinking.
Please.
Okay. Thinking is past, future, past, future, past, future. That's all it is. Thinking is actually, from a metaphysical perspective, from a totally detached perspective. Okay. If we could shrink all the way back and look at the machinations of the mind, we would actually see that thinking is just the movement of the past. It's mentally flipping through your Rolodex of memories. That's what thinking is. Okay.
Right.
So we then take a memory, past, and project it into a so-called future. That's thinking. And that's all it is. Now, when human beings think, they trap themselves in time. And this is why human beings have limited themselves. They are now bound by time through thought. Now they've reduced themselves to logic and linearity. And that is not imagination. And that is not powerful.
Quote about imagination and the power of it from Einstein. This remembering that you're talking about is very different to this memory that you're talking about, thinking about the past is very different to the remembering you were talking about before. Just to, dot the I's and cross the T's.
That, by the way, that's very fantastic observation. Yeah, they have nothing to do with each other. Okay, so the remembering that we were speaking about earlier, I remembered how to heal myself. Okay, that's part of the actual fabric of what we are. Okay, that is woven within the love and wisdom of what sentience or the soul or the consciousness actually is. It's part of gnosis. It's part of actually what we are. It's so deep and we can feel it. Now, the other thing that we were just talking about is just something we've identified with once we got here.
Mental chatter. That's part of the 2.5% mental chatter.
You got it. Right. They have nothing to do with each other. But this point, though, I want to come back to it for one more second because it's profound.
Yeah.
We put ourselves in time through thinking, which is why I say the EMI is a limitation program that runs by thinking. What is the remedy for thinking? Meditation. And now all of us can do it with magic in 1 second.
It's just pretty remarkable, actually. Those two tricks are just, I like what you're peddling with those tricks. It's like the word peddling and tricks going together. Probably sounds a bit rude with the profundity of what you're sharing. But I want to say peddling tricks. Pardon me.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. This, what I want all of us to take away from this is really just how unlimited we are, and that the issue, as I see it, okay, is that we haven't been in this version of the 21st century. We haven't been taught properly. We haven't been educated properly. Okay, the stuff that and not just me, but the stuff that I teach, from my perspective, is proper education. This is real metaphysics. This is actually how you do it. And as you can see, you can do it in 1 second and it's tangible immediately. That's how you know you're working with the truth.
Yeah, with
It's an
the borderline intimidating part of it is how innate it feels, right? Which is, yeah, yeah.
this all we need is to remember these things.
Mm,
Okay. And I just happened to remember, I even knew that I would remember. Right. So
mm,
it's just it's the role that I play as RJ, to
mm,
teach this stuff, to put my body back together, and to anyone can do this when they're
mhm,
taught properly. Anyone can do this. This is metaphysics, magic. This
mm,
is metaphysics. What the internal sentience, energy, frequency. It's the same for me as it is for you, as it is for your neighbor, etc.
mm,
It's universal.
mhm,
So when we start to work in this way, we leave the limitation program of the ego mind identity is gone. And now we return to what we are. We are our higher mind. We are our higher self. And the imagination of God has no limitations, has none. But when you think, you are locked in logic and linearity, and you're locked
mm,
in time. Your future is your past.
mm.
Think about that statement. Your future is your past, because your future is based upon your past. There is no future without a past. So that's what our future is. It is our past. Now look at this limitation now. This is how all of us operate. It's
Everyone.
insane.
Yeah,
That's what I mean. It's insane. And this is why people are frustrated. They're angry. They're sad. They don't feel fulfilled. Well, of course you don't.
mm,
Of course you don't. Look what we've done to ourselves. And it's
mhm,
no one's fault. It's no one's fault. This happens through incarnation into the lower frequencies. It's almost like a stupor-like effect being down here. And that stupor-like effect is thinking. So we have to learn how to meditate. And now everyone can in 1 second.
I love that. One of the things that's really settling in for me in this conversation is feeling like a bit of a quote book today. With Ram Dass has his familiar quote of the there's a piece about the from like taking off a pair of well-loved shoes.
Mm.
Like coming into life and then coming out of life. It's like you know, it's just like putting on and taking off in like a well-loved pair of shoes. So I'm conscious that attention is also a big part of this. So step one, how to EMI and how to, you know, really work through that. Then you talk a lot about attention, and then, you know, we've got like almost there's 4 directions of consciousness. There's 4 different stages, like the mental, the remembering, the verbal, the physical. So step us through, mate. Step us through. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There are 4. Well, there's 4 rudimentary expressions
Mm.
that a human being can have. It's either mental, emotional, verbal, or physical.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, when we harness those things and put them all together, that's one of the steps of the healing technique. So, in other words, real quick,
Mm.
is that see it. I used to
Mm.
imagine myself snorkeling,
Mm.
kicking my legs, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Mhm.
So I used to give myself a vision of my perfect health, if you will, right?
Mhm.
I just wanted to walk. So I had to
Yeah.
give myself this vision of what it was like to have ability with my legs. So I would imagine that I was snorkeling. Then I would imagine and remember what it felt like
Mm.
tangibly, like a muscle memory. I
Mm.
would make the cells and nerves remember,
Mhm.
literally.
Mhm.
So I would see it, my mind's eye, snorkeling. I used to live in Kauai, so I used to love to snorkel. So I
Yeah.
would see myself doing that. Then I would remember tangibly what it felt like to be able to kick my legs, all the muscles moving, all the blood pumping in my legs. I would make my cells and nerves and muscles remember. I would bring the life back into it by remembering tangibly what it felt like. Then I would add verbalization to that. So you can think of a command, right? I like commands. I like magic. So I would give myself a command, right? I would say things like, I am the conqueror of my mind and body. I am, which is the God principle, I am the conqueror of my mind and body.
Mm.
And then I would add a physical gesture to that. Well, I mean, I couldn't do what I really wanted to do because I was paralyzed. So the only thing I could do at that time was kind of move my hands, which I'm still doing, move my hands around, right?
Yeah.
So you put these 4 things. So I had the visualization, snorkeling. I would tangibly remember what that felt like. I would then say, I am the conqueror of my mind and body. And I would do just what I'm doing right now. I would do this. Those are the 4 ways we express ourselves. Mentally, visually, mentally, emotionally, verbally, and physically. Now, for some reason, we have not put these 4 things together as one thing and unified them. Because this is how we're most powerful. There's no other way to express ourselves. There's no other way. Okay. So if we want to be as powerful as possible, put them all together. Put them all together as one thing and then unify it. The self and those 4 things are now one. There's no separation now between the image, the feeling, the verbalization, and the physicality. Guess what? That's magic.
You're bringing your whole self to it.
That's how you do magic. That step right there is magic. And by the way, you can do that for other things besides healing. So,
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, there was a couple of things in there because even with the sea piece, I know you were picturing yourself snorkeling, but then there was pieces where you were also picturing your spine. So the vision went all the way out, actually, to all the way in as well. And then there was this really trippy dippy piece, which I wanted to check in with you today, was the second piece around the mental piece and remembering, because in some instances we may not necessarily remember what it was like prior to a thing that we're looking to achieve, and potentially that opens up a whole new portal to manifestation almost. I felt when I was following your work, I was like, oh well, this is healing. But just with that little loose thread, if I started remembering things that haven't happened in a way that they'd already happened just by leveraging something like gratitude, let's call it that, for something, say, like it's already happened, I'm actually mastering manifestation rather than healing now. It's flipping to a whole nother dimension.
Now you're talking. You're a wizard, my friend. You are. You're already there. Okay. Absolutely. Now, if what it is that we desire, right, has never occurred, so to speak, like obviously I was not always paralyzed. I became paralyzed. So I obviously remember what it was like to do all that stuff. Okay. But I totally understand what you're saying. Well, what about manifesting something that I've never had? Tons of money, a beautiful relationship, or whatever it is. Okay.
Fulfillment. Yeah.
Right. Imagine what it feels like as if it's already done. Imagine, again, imagination opens the door. Imagination opens the door. The entire multiverse is just a bubble of God's imagination. I mean that literally. Okay. So if we've never achieved it or experienced it before, right? Okay. Imagine what that would feel like right now, that it's already in you. Now remember, everything is in you. Okay. The tree is in the seedling. Okay. We're talking about real alchemy. Everything is already in there. We're now doing the metaphysics to do real alchemy, to bring it out. The healing is within you. The manifestation is within you. Everything is within you. There is no out there. Let's get that straight. There is no out there. It's a projection of your consciousness, which is within you. There's no out there. Forget out there.
It's trippy when you start thinking about it that way, isn't it? But even the sun, even the trees, everything, even you out there right now, it's all happening from my 5 senses, which the feedback is actually the only real dependable part, is the part that's firing within me.
Yeah, this is what I mean about being an atom or a cell or a fractal or a quark of God. The whole thing is God is within your consciousness. It's a projection outward. Okay, that's the Maya. It's an illusion here. We have to understand this. Everything is within. Self-mastery is not a moving target that lies outside of yourself. Self-mastery is within. Everything is within.
RJ, there's so much depth to what you're sharing, and part of me has to ask this question before I let you go today, was what happens for those people that are on the journey that you're trying to help that won't accept the help because they're too closed-minded?
That's a great question. Well, I think I'm given some grace with that, because the only people that contact me or reach out to me or ever even hear of me, I guess, so to speak, are people that are ready. Right? Like attracts like. opposites do not attract. Whoever said that doesn't understand metaphysics. Like energies attract like energies. Okay. So if someone is desiring their own evolution of their consciousness to be able to live to their highest potential, they're going to be drawn to metaphysics, whether it's my work or somebody else's. They're going to be drawn to metaphysics because this is how you do it. So I don't ever have to convince anybody of anything, because the people that reach out to me are starving. People are gorging themselves on information, and they're still starving for wisdom. So I tend to find. Yeah.
Sorry, just the parallel to like our nutrition in this day and age as well. You know, like we're feeding ourselves so much food, and people are getting like, you know, bigger and bigger and bigger, yet they're starving of actual nutrition. Sorry, please continue as you were saying.
I mean, you so like I said, you're a wizard. Okay. So, and I mean it. So we are drawn to exactly what we're drawn to for a reason. If anyone stumbles upon RJ and the book and these courses and stuff, it's because they're ready. And by the way, that's why I'm here. That's actually why I'm here, without being too specific about a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm here because people are ready to hear this stuff. They're ready to put themselves back together. They're ready to be an actual wizard and start doing all these metaphysics. People are ready. So it's like, okay, well, I'll show up, I'll do it, and blah, blah, blah. Right. So the people that are ready are drawn. The people that aren't ready are like, oh, that RJ guy, he's crazy. Okay. I promise you this, though. Those that aren't ready are like, oh, that's all nonsense or whatever. That's fine. That's where they're at right now. That's exactly true for them. I'm certainly not going to like deny or invalidate their truth. For them, that's exactly true. And that's totally fine. It really is totally fine. I'm going to add one caveat to that. I promise you, everyone eventually will need this type of wisdom like they need air for their own evolution. Whether it's my work or someone else's, they will need, this is the way. Metaphysics, the higher mind is the way. We are not our lower mind. That's a product of the incarnation. We are our higher self. We are our higher mind. And if we want to ascend and evolve our consciousness with the greatest efficacy, metaphysics, magic is the way.
RJ, brother. I'll put a link to Supercharged Self-Healing in the show notes for sure, for those that are ready to check it out. It is, metaphysical, but with so much practical like steps through the journey. You did say that you spoke a lot about the EMI stuff at the beginning. To be honest, I found that super valuable, especially, the ego, mind, identity, like how, just like you said in this episode, the struggle itself is even to let go of the ego is the ego. Just like calling that out and then just going, hey, bro, you're just a couple of eyes. What's up? And it's like, oh, fuck, that was so easy. So appreciating your magic, appreciating your ways. And also, like not to put this lightly, it's a lifetime's of work that informs this conversation, not just this conversation, and your healing journey, especially what you've been through to bring this back to us. Man, thank you so much, really. Thank you so much for sharing yourself with us here today.
Thank you for saying that. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It is my love. I'm here through love. I'm here because of love. And what I do is my love and my passion to be able to share that with everybody. But thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, on behalf of the Inspired Evolution Tribe and myself, wishing you all the best on all your ventures forward, bro. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment. And if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.